Hi traders, and welcome to my video on the Forex Robotron EA. In this video I'm going to run through the various settings and run some tests so you can get an idea of how the EA performs based on historical data. You can also check the link in the description to see up-to-date live verified results of the EA. Okay, so this is a multi-currency expert advisor, which means that it can run on multiple currency pairs. Okay, those currency pairs recommended are the Australian dollar and US dollar, Swiss franc, Japanese yen, euro, Australian dollar, euro, Canadian dollar, euro, Swiss franc, euro, British pound, euro dollar, pound dollar, US dollar, Canadian dollar, and US dollar, Swiss franc. Okay, so you can trade one or multiple currency pairs depending on your preferences. As with any trading strategy, the more currency pairs that you trade, the more opportunities, trading signals there will be. So this is a test that I've just run based on the Euro US dollar 5-minute charts. The EA by default trades the 5-minute charts. You are, of course, free to play around with the settings and test on different trading instruments and different timeframes if you wish. Otherwise, you can use the default settings straight out of the box. In any case, you will need to enter your license number here, and you will also need to choose your lot size here. Okay, if you have use risk set to false, you need to set your lots in here, or you can just set use risk to true, choose your risk percent, and the EA will calculate the lot size for you. Okay, there are some other settings available to experiment with, or you can just use, as I said, the default settings straight out of the box. They are universal settings, which means that the same settings can be used on all of the recommended currency pairs. For me, this is a real strong point. It just indicates that there is strong logic behind the trade-in strategy implemented within the EA. Okay, sometimes you see expert advisors which have completely different settings for completely different instruments. And whilst I do agree that there can be slight modifications to an extent to adjust to the different behaviors of different instruments, however, more often than not, these are just down to over optimization or curve fitting to basically find the base settings on a particular data set and create set files for them, which is just nothing but randomness over the data that's been tested. Okay, the Forex Robotron EA has been tested with over 20 years of historical data using default settings across multiple currency pairs, backed up by verified real live accounts. My FX book verified, which you can see using the link below. So yeah, so basically we can have another quick look at the settings. As I said, license number. There are some other features you can experiment with if you want. So we've got the maximum spread and maximum slippage. This basically means the EA will not trade if the spread or slippage is above these values, which are in pips. You can change the trading hours, which are based on GMT time with daylight savings time as well. When the EA is attached to the chart, these hours are different. It's just because we're back testing, we have to adjust the hours according to our broker's data that we're using. And if you are using GMT tick data with daylight savings time, you can just use the default settings here. Days, so you can choose to trade Friday or Sunday. They're false by default, so we'll just leave them as that. That's because there can be big gaps over the weekend. So the EA doesn't want to get caught on the wrong side of a big weekend gap, and spreads can be higher on the market opening on Sunday or Monday depending where you are, so we'll leave that false. We'll use 5% risk for the purpose of testing. Of course, you can just use a risk that you feel comfortable with. We'll leave the magic numbers the same. This is perhaps useful if you're running other EAs on the same platform and you just want to separate the trading activity, make sure they don't clash. We'll use the default stop loss of 50 and take profit of 100. These levels are not often hit just because the EA uses a dynamic close, which we'll get to in a minute. So minimum profit, the EA will only close a trade if the profit is greater than this amount, which is in monetary value. Okay, we'll just leave that at the default. Minutes to sleep after a losing trade. This basically will switch the EA off for this amount of minutes if there's a losing trade, and that's to prevent re-entering in adverse market conditions. You know, you don't necessarily want to take another trade straight after a loss. Okay, so this is dynamic close I was talking about. If this dynamic closing loss is set to false. The EA has basically a dynamic close condition which adapts to the current market conditions. Okay, so a lot of EAs and trading strategies just rely on fixed stop loss and fixed take profit levels that do not take into account the underlying market conditions. However, with the Forex Robotron EA, it has this dynamic close condition which uses a combination of technical indicators and price action analysis just to determine if it's a good idea to exit a position regardless of the stop loss or take profit level being hit. Okay, and this is one of the things that sets it apart from other EAs that just rely on fixed levels all the time. That being said, the dynamic closing loss is set to false by default. Okay, so a trade will remain open in a loss until it hits the stop loss if this is set to false. Whereas the dynamic closing profit is set to true. So even if the take profit is not reached, the EA can still close a trade if it deems the market conditions suggest to do so. Okay, I've experimented quite a bit with these settings, and really having the dynamic, definitely having the close on profit to true tends to yield the best results. Whereas having the dynamic closing loss set to false or true is actually quite similar. It just depends on whether you prefer, you don't mind a lower win rate. If you set this to true, there will be a lower win rate. Okay, but the average loss will be closer to the average win. Okay, whereas if you have the dynamic closing loss set to false, the win rate will be higher, historically speaking, will be higher, but a loss can be greater because it means that in the event of a loss, it will be the full stop loss that is hit. Okay, so trade direction, you can choose if you want the EA to trade short or trade long. I've tested both of these and it definitely performs better using the default of trade long. Trading style, trade aggressive, so true or false. Having this set to false does mean slightly less trades based on my testing, but perhaps a slightly higher win rate as well, just because it's more picky with its trades. Whereas if you set it to true, you will get more trading activity. However, it can slightly lower the win rate based on my testing, and also the average win tends to be slightly smaller because it's just more aggressive, as the name says, for that particular setting. ATR, so this is the average true range indicator. This is included in the EA to try and avoid volatile market conditions. Okay, so if the average true range is greater than the maximum ATR level, the EA will not trade. And this is in case there's some news released or something else going on in the market that just causes too much volatility. The EA will not trade and will stay out of trouble, which ties in nicely with the maximum spread and slippage filter. Just to, this EA does trade during the in the evening, New York and London time. So it's trading around the open of the Asian session or just prior to that, when there's usually lower volatility. Okay, so it is a strategy that kind of relies on that. Hence having these filters implemented within them. And as with any trading strategy, the lower the broker spread and the lower the commission and the better the slippage, so the less slippage the better, the more chance the EA has of performing well. Okay, so that being said, let's just run that's the EU, euro, dollar. Let's just run that. How far back should we go? Should we just go all available data? And let's just click start. And we will run it back on all the data available on the platform and see how things go. This is every tick testing, which, as it says there, is the most precise method just because we're using intra-bar prices. Open prices only testing model would be a lot quicker, but not as accurate just because it doesn't account for the intra-bar prices, which can impact stop loss, take profit, closing prices as well. But you can use open prices only testing just to get some, perhaps a rough set of results if you're running an optimization, and then just confirm them with every tick testing afterwards. We're testing, use date here as you can, the dates you want to test. I'll just uncheck that because we're going to test all available data. and that started there from 99, so long time ago. 5% risk. We'll just watch how that performs. I think it's worth noting as well that the spread here is set to current, which means we're using the current market spread, okay, at the time that we started the test. Bearing in mind, if you do start a test on a weekend, for example, it will be using the weekend spread, which can be higher than usual. As well, the modeling quality is limited to 90% on the MT4 strategy tester by default. So if you want 99% modeling quality using real tick data, then you can use a third-party software such as Burt's Tick Data Suite will help you with that. Okay, so let's just see how this testing plays out. Well, so we had a nice initial run up here. And around the 2008 crisis, no surprise, we had this dip down. Things started to pick up again around here. Okay, a lot of traders just look for this line indefinitely going upwards. I mean, that's just not realistic, okay? Even on some of the most profitable assets in the long run, you're going to go through phases like this. Every strategy has up and down phases, of course, and this is all based on back testing. It's not, you know, a guarantee of what's going to happen in the future. Nobody can predict the future, but when it comes to expert advisors, back testing is one of the most powerful tools we have, along with verified results, which again you can see by using the link in the description below. Okay, this is just the euro dollar. Actually one of the best performing pairs using this EA, simply because, well, I think primarily because the euro dollar tends to have some of the lowest spreads. And yeah, you can see there all the way up till, you know, this month, real nice upwards curve. Okay, so what was the win rate? So we have a 96% win rate, which is obviously fantastic. Profit factor 2.96, that's great. Lots of profit. Okay, drawdown, you know, it did go for that 2008 period, so it's acceptable for me. You can, of course, lower the risk size from the settings if you wish, you know, 2% or whatever you feel comfortable with, or you can use fixed lots. Keeping in mind, this is just one currency pair, and this EA does trade multiple currency pairs as well. So you can get results, you know, similar to this based on my testing on other currency pairs as well. Just select them for testing. Let's just have a look at another currency pair to test for that is recommended by the developer, the pound US dollar. Let's run that. Okay, this is going to take a little while, but while that's running, just to reiterate, these are of course back tests, which is using historical data. It's no guarantee of what will happen in the future moving forward. Always demo trade to begin with, just to get an idea of how any particular EA or trading strategy works. Okay, never risk more than you can afford. All the usual stuff. Don't expect to wake up a millionaire tomorrow. Be realistic. Check the verified results just to see how the EA has been performing recently. And yeah, you can trade one or multiple currency pairs depending on your risk preferences. The more pairs you trade, the more trades you will get. Surprise, surprise. I do think this EA is quite selective with its trades, hence the higher win rate. Okay, so it's quite picky basically. It's not going to take every single trade and be super aggressive, even with the aggressive mode on. And for that reason, generally trading, having it running on more pairs will lead to more trades. It just really depends on you, how patient you are. And you can, of course, optimize settings as well. So if you want to try and find settings for different time frames, different trading instruments, you know, you're free to do that. Just be careful you don't end up over optimizing or curve fitting, which is basically just finding settings that are good for a particular data set. But as I said, the developer has provided default settings on multiple currency pairs. Therefore, that shows me that it's a solid trading strategy anyway. It doesn't really need to be, messed around with. Although, if your hobby's optimizing EA is just doing different settings, then you're free to do so. Perhaps your broker spreads are quite high, you pay high commission, and maybe the sort of sensitive nature to the spreads is impacting you. Then you can just experiment with like higher time frames, or trading instruments with lower spreads, and any of the other settings as well. I'll just show you briefly how to run an optimization in a second. Just wait for this to finish. You can see there, fantastic performance as well on the pound dollar. Again, similar amount of, well, a lot more profit actually, 25 mil on that, I think it was. Well, it was high on the euro dollar as well. This is backtesting, profit factor of a 10, 96% win rate. Okay, so bearing in mind this is a backtest, it does look good in theory, but it's a 90% modeling quality or 89%, just probably missing a few minor data ticks there. But yeah, the potential is certainly there. Obviously, brokers, spreads, and commissions and slippage will have an impact. If I just go back to the euro dollar and just show you what I was talking about, optimization. So optimization allows you to combine various settings to see what the results would have been. So you just choose what you want to test. Let's just say we want to test trade aggressive, true or false. And we want to test, what else should we test? Dynamic closing loss, true or false. Okay. And let's test stop loss as well. So let's test stop loss at 25, going up to 50. So that will test a stop loss of 25 and a stop loss of 50, because we're starting at 25, going up in 25 steps, stopping at 50. And it will test true or false for the dynamic close on loss and true or false for the trade aggressive. We'll run just past year for the purpose of this video. We don't want you sat there for hours waiting for the results to come through. Check optimization. And then what the strategy tester will do is it will test the past year using all those various combinations of settings that we chose. Under optimization results are where the results of the various combinations will come in. Like you see there, stop loss 25, stop loss 50, dynamic close on loss false or true, trade aggressive false or true. So it tell us, the profit factor of each of the results, expected payoff, the drawdown, and the profit. You can just sort according to what matters most to you. And this is just a good way to get bespoke settings. Perhaps you want to try and beat the default settings, or you want to find settings for other trading instruments and time frames. Okay, so once the settings come through, you can just double click. And what that will do is it will load those particular settings into the EA settings here. You can see the stop loss has gone from 50 to 25. Dynamic closing loss is still false, but trade aggressive is now true. You can save those and load them at a later date when you attach the EA to your charts or in the strategy tester. So we double click and then you can click start, and what that will do is it will run a test using those particular settings, as you can see here. And yeah, that was a pretty solid performance for the past year using those settings. As I said, this is backtested, no guarantee of the future. We are using the current market spread. It might not have been the spread at the time these trades were taken. We're not accounting for commission or slippage, so there are factors involved. However, it looks decent based on our testing. If you go to the website using the description below as well, you can, using the link in the description, you can see verified results and also back tests over 20 plus years across all of the currency pairs. Can trade with optimization as well. It's worth mentioning that we have this genetic algorithm checked. Okay, so what this does is it basically filters the optimization to only optimize what the strategy tester thinks will produce the best results. Okay, if you have this unchecked, it will just do every single combination. So depending on how many of these you have selected to test, the time taken can take, it will be a different time. The more you have that you want to optimize, the longer it will take, basically. Optimize parameter. So this is what you want to do the optimization to try and target like a higher balance, a higher profit factor, etc. And in the optimization tab here, you can filter the results that are displayed in the optimization results tab. For example, if you only want results with a maximal drawdown of 20, you can just put in there 20, have it selected, and then you'll only see in here results of the optimization that meet your requirements. Okay. And yeah, interestingly, that was running with 5% risk and the drawdown was just 3%. So be interested to see. Let's just run another test similar and just put 10% risk, a bit risky for some, especially when you consider if we're trading multiple currency pairs, this risk could be multiplied, you know, depending on how many trades are open. But okay, so profit substantially more and the maximal drawdown still within a reasonable 6%. Okay, but it just really depends on, you know, your own trading preferences. Obviously, every trader is different. Use a risk that you feel comfortable with. You can obviously, well, I would certainly run any EA on a demo trading account to begin with. And you can use the default settings straight out of the box if you like. Just change the license and the lot or risk size. And I've just shown you how to do an optimization if you feel like you want to experiment. You know, you can experiment with the take profit as well, the minimum profit, you know, all the settings if you want. There's not a load of settings here. I think the inner workings of the EA does, you know, the majority of the work. But if you're just someone who likes to experiment and wants to try different things, you might even be able to find settings better than the defaults. Just bear in mind that what I was talking about, curve fitting and over optimization, when you just find settings that are only good on the data set that you've done. Okay, try and test over as much historical data as possible and to verify results are good across multiple currency pairs or other trading instruments. Okay, hopefully that's given you a good idea of this EA and how it works and the various ways in which you can test it to meet your own needs. As I said, use the link in the description if you want to check out backtest over 20 plus years of historical data across all the currency pairs that it trades, as well as real live verified accounts. Please like and subscribe if you found this video useful. Thanks for watching and I'll catch you on the next one.